The only thing that's keeping you from God's best for your life is the idea that you can't possess it. I want you to break out of your comfort zone and to not settle for safe. Don't believe in the fear and the insecurities that exist within your own mind. We rebuke that right now in the name of Jesus, and we decree and declare liberty over your life, over your family, not just for you, but for generations to come.
So we all see where you are now, but I want to go back to when you were 13 years old and found out you were pregnant.
Yeah.
Can you ever imagine that day, that night, whenever it was, when you realized you were pregnant? Obviously, everyone listening knows the bishop is your father, your mother, your celebrity status wasn't sought but was there, and now you're 13 years old. Did you ever think from there you would get here, and what was it like in those moments?
My goodness. I just remembered as you were speaking that, and I don't even think that I've shared this with you, when I found out I was pregnant, it was on Easter. On Easter, so the day that we're celebrating the resurrecting of our Savior, I felt like a tomb had been rolled over my hope, over my destiny, like the stone had just been rolled over every dream that I could ever have. And it was in that moment that I really felt like that the goodness of God, the grace of God was reserved for people who did everything the right way. And it wasn't until I started connecting with other people and really just realizing that we all have a story, we've all gone through something, that I felt like the stone began to roll away a bit. But I felt useless. I felt dirty. I felt like there was no promise for my life, and I felt like my role would be to see everyone else in life win while I sat there and licked my wounds. And as I began to see that I wasn't in it by myself, I believe that that's a trick that the enemy plays on our minds, is that he makes us believe because of our issues and because of our struggles that we have to live life in a prison. And so we go about our day and we look like we're free, and we're still in our homes, in our marriages, on our workforces, and it looks like we're free, but on the inside we're hurting, we're broken, we don't believe anymore. But what helped me, and what I hope my story does for other people, is just reminds you, you're not in this by yourself. You are not the only one facing what you're currently facing. As a matter of fact, the thing that you're currently facing, someone has already overcome. And because they've overcome, there is hope for your story. People have had it worse. People have had it better. Stop comparing your story to what's happened in other people's life, and start to decide right now in this moment that I am not going to allow this stone to be rolled over my destiny. Jesus died so I don't have to get on the cross. I don't have to spend the rest of my life hanging by my own failures and my own mistakes. Because he lives in me, I have been resurrected too. And so, God, what do you want to do with my life? What do you want to do with my brokenness? What do you want to do with this pain that I felt? Because I serve a God who makes all things work together for our good. But that working feels like crushing sometimes. It feels like pain and disappointment. But it also, on the other side, I mean, look at our lives now. It's restoration that you couldn't imagine. And there's a time when you will look back and you will thank God. You will thank him for the tears that are currently streaming down your face.
Hallelujah. Wow. Hallelujah. If your parents were here, I would ask this question. And I'm going to ask you to represent your parents, because, you know, I've been doing this. I've been around TBN for nearly 30 years. I know I have a lot of grandparents. I have a lot of parents. I have parents that have faced this with their children, maybe will, or even grandparents who have or will face, you know, your daughter is pregnant. What did they go through, and how can a parent reconcile when their children make decisions and things happened? What would they be saying to those that are facing this as parents?
We're a blended family. We have 6 children. And I can tell you right now that it's no parent's dream that your child gets pregnant as a teenager. So this isn't something that my parents were wishing or praying for. But I tell you that what they did was they did not allow their disappointment to strip me of their love, of their support, and more importantly, of God's grace. So I would encourage you, if you're at home, maybe you know someone, maybe you've experienced this yourself and you're wondering, you know, I put put all of these things in this child. Where is it? And what did I do wrong? I want to comfort you in saying that everything that you put in that child is still there. And sometimes the seeds of life have to be covered in dirt. And sometimes that dirt looks like teen pregnancy. Sometimes it looks like an addiction. Sometimes it looks like dropping out of school. And it's normal to feel like, what am I going to do? But trust that what you began in that child, Christ is going to finish. What you began in that child, Christ is going to finish. You cannot control their destiny and everything that they do, but what you can do is be a river of love in the driest seasons of their life. You can remind them that they're never facing anything alone. And what made me feel so much comfort during my season of pregnancy and all of the other things that I went through is that I got so curious about how my parents could still love me, that I wanted to know about their God. I wanted to know about this source of love that just seemed to run unconditionally. And I had an encounter with their God, and it changed my life.
Wow. Well, we're going to come back and talk about just how to connect the dots, because I think right now, both of your stories are red dotting people. And they're saying, oh my gosh, that's me, that's where I was. And the obvious next question is, how do I get from where I am to where I need to go?
Yeah, so Lost and Found was a memoir about my life, and I shared it because I started a blog online when I just had this revelation that other people had gone through what I was suffering with. Other people knew what it was like to have shame, to have guilt, to not believe that God's best was possible for your own life because of what you've gone through. And the more I began sharing that message on social media, that it is available to us regardless of what you've gone through. My blog had over 1 million hits within the first 3 months. And I just decided that I wanted to tell my story. I didn't just want to be this talking head over a computer screen. I wanted them to know, not only had I had a teen pregnancy, but I dropped out of college and I was in a toxic relationship, an emotionally and physically abusive relationship. And I wanted to share that story because when we find ourselves suffering and struggling, we often make decisions out of that brokenness that make us even more broken. And so I wanted to break that curse off of women like me, even men who have experienced their own issues. And so for me, that's what Lost and Found was all about. It was telling my story, but for Don't Settle for Safe, I wanted to give them practical tools. Okay, you know my story, you know what I've gone through, but let's talk about your story and how we can break the patterns that exist within your life so that you can live in the fullness and freedom of who God has called you to be.
Yeah, excellent. I think what's amazing, as I was reading the book today, both of you, you guys, I heard one time somebody say, time is God's way of making sure everything doesn't happen at the same time. But actually, as I was reading the book, I'm like, no, it is all happening at the same time for you guys. I mean, typically you get married, you have children. I mean, you have 6 children, ranging a 20-year gap between Ella and the oldest is Rin. So at the same time you're changing diapers, you're dealing with, where they're going to go to college. You're dealing with driver's license and toddler chairs and learning how to teach one to walk while the other one you're like, get back here. I mean, so, every step, now you're pastoring 2 churches, one in Denver and one in LA. So every day, this is not some bubble you living in. You're living it out. It's pretty wild.
Yeah. We met in the air. We always say we literally met in the air. Our books were coming out. Our first books were coming out just a month apart, and we met. It was it was actually a meeting to talk about our books, and so that Sarah could come to our church and speak. And so we met in the air. We're on book tours. We fell in love in the air, and I don't think that we've come down since. I don't think we've come down.
No, it's great because both of you. I mean, you mentioned a blended family. You have so you had 2 children, Mackenzie and Malachi, and then you had
Ren, Tay, and Isaiah.
Yeah. And then you come to, and then of course, I remember 2 things. I remember, first of all, when you were telling me that you were in love, I can tell you where I was at, Goodwill Ranch in California in front of Don Juan Restaurant. When you were telling me, and I'm like, okay. And then I remember also getting a call from you right after the doctor gave you the report that you were going to be with child. And I remember saying this was now the the eternity having linked now the DNA of generations that brought you together was now sealed in this. So it's an amazing to see. Touré, what do you think becomes the most important element that has not only made this story so compelling, but keeps you in it, and then especially now watching God just thrust you?
Yeah.
A lot of people think success is a reward. It's actually a responsibility.
Absolutely.
How did you get here?
It is.
And how are you sustaining? What's the key?
Yeah, I think it's alignment. I do believe in aligning yourself with God, being radically obedient, trusting Him, trusting His love enough to know that He's got an incredible plan. And if you would yield to it and surrender to it, things are going to be amazing. You will truly become, as my wife's book says, unstoppable. I think for us, one of the things that God did in our lives very early on, our relationship very, very, very early on, was to confirm that this was Him. We fell in love pretty quickly. We knew after our first date that we were to be married. Now, I'm the type of pastor, I speak against that. I do. It's like you come to me, your congregation members come to you and they're like, Pastor, we just met him and he's my husband. I'm like, hey, slow down, hold up. So I would be one that would really speak against that, but God spoke to both of us, and so it was accelerated from the start. But I do believe that when you know something is God, and this is definitely a God thing, and the fruit that has transpired in the past 4 years is evident, but for me, what drives me is I know this is God.
Yeah. I
know that whatever He calls us to do, yes, it's going to be challenging. Yes, it's going to stretch us, but it's going to be amazing and it's going to be destined. And so for me, it's alignment, always pursuing alignment, always searching your heart, asking the tough questions. I mean, for us, Denver, we had just gotten One Church LA off the ground. We had just settled into our new home, our dream home, in just outside of Los Angeles. And then God says, Denver, and once we knew that it was really God, we were willing to let go of everything that had become comfortable. We didn't want to settle for safe. We would have been safe. But we were willing to let it go, and we stepped out on faith, and God has just blessed us tremendously, and our kids are covered. It's like all things work together for good. We're so busy trying to hold on and make sure that this is okay, and that, let me just fix this, God, and then I'll come and serve you. Not realizing that when you seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, He's already got all those other things worked out. And so for me, again, it's alignment, it's obedience, and it's knowing that this is a God thing, and we've found tremendous, not only success, but significance in following the path of alignment.
Well, I think it's amazing. I wish we had more time just to talk about that aspect, but I would encourage you. You actually did a talk once this whole thing started happening. You did a talk called Finding Your Soulmate, and that exploded on social media. I mean, it's kicking near 3 million views. That was pretty amazing.
Very, very open, very transparent about things that I learned, in hard order. But it was 5 keys to identifying your soulmate. Someone on Facebook reached out to me and said, can you teach about marriage and divorce and finding love? And I was challenged because, I had gone through a divorce and I was embarrassed, and how could I be, a man of God and something so painful happened to me, but there was freedom in talking about it. So I was transparent at the time, the divorce was in the past, and I had met Sarah. We weren't married yet, but there were so many things that I learned about love and marriage and a relationship, and I just wanted to tell the world. So it was 5 keys to identifying your soulmate. The first key was chemistry. Obviously, you have to have some sort of chemistry, but you can't stop there because you can have chemistry with 5 people. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that you're soulmate. And so you have to qualify that chemistry through connection. When God really begins to bring this deep desire, it's almost like this is more than just you're cute or we're thinking on the same level. There's a soul connection, but even still, that has to be qualified. So the third step was wholeness. You got to be whole because you want to make sure that what's drawing you to one another is not your mutual brokenness. You know, we call it codependency masquerading itself as love. So we wanted to make sure it wasn't that. So being whole is being able to say, you know what, God, I'm good all by myself. I don't need anyone. You know, if this is you, then fine. But if it's not, me and you are going to be in love, and we're going to be happy and healthy, and I'm cool until you bring the person into our lives. So third step is wholeness. Wholeness qualifies that is love. And then I think that before you can move on, you need divine confirmation. God, is this the person that you have for me? You know, and God has to say yes, and you have to be still enough for him to say yes. You can't want it so bad that you're like, God, is this the person for me? Because I realize this person, I really want this. No. You ask the question, and then you wait for God to affirm you, and be willing to pull an Abraham and Isaac. If it's not, I'm going to set this thing that I really like down on the table, and God, if you give it back to me, it's mine. If you don't, then I'll leave it. And we've had to. And we've done that, and we've done that in our relationship, because by the time we met, we realized that there was such a great destiny on our lives. We didn't want anything to get in the way of it. Yeah. And so early on, you know, we had to say, God, if this is not you, then we're willing to sacrifice it. Yes, you know, we love each other, and yes, you know, it's amazing. Look at her, I love her. You know, but yes, all that. But at the end of the day, our destiny was more important. And the last key was so you have to have chemistry, you have to have connection, you have to be whole, you have to have divine confirmation. And then the fifth one was a sense of purpose. I believe that when God brings people together, yes, you know, love is in the equation, but I think it's bigger than love. I believe it's about destiny. Wow. And so was there a sense of purpose? And we are living it every single day. Yeah. It's incredible.
No, I love it. I love watching it. I want to go back to an element that I think is important, Sarah, about people growing up in the church. And the statistics are pretty staggering that a lot of people that are raised in church reject the church. Part of what led to the whole making bad decisions and kind of the whole dynamic of where you're at was kind of rooted in the fact that you really kind of struggled with the church, in spite of the fact that, you know, I would call your dad the world's greatest preacher in one case. But you struggled with the church, with what you were seeing from your perspective.
Yeah, I think that I really took church and made it God. And so whenever I saw something happen in church that didn't look like God, I was disappointed, not just with the people, but with God as well. And so my relationship with the church became complicated, because though there were these powerful moments, there was also hypocrisy. There were also people who were making mistakes. And I thought that that meant that God wasn't good the way they were saying that he was good, that he couldn't transform your life the way that everyone says he could. And then I think as I've grown older and really evolved in my knowledge of life in salvation is a process. You know, it's not like you just get saved and then all of a sudden you have no more issues, you have no more struggles. It's a process. And so sometimes we can be so consumed with critiquing other people's process that we become stagnant. And in that moment when we're stagnant, it gives us a sideline view of watching where everyone else is messing up. But I really think that had I stopped looking at other people's lives and focused on my own, that I probably would have discovered my own brokenness much sooner. But you want to believe something is real. And so I decided to share my testimony, not just the good things, but the difficult things, the divorce, the teen pregnancy, because I didn't want someone in the pews to think that you made it to the stage without any struggle. And so we all have our own journey to walk out. It may not be a stage like mine is. It may be an office. It may be a medical practice. It may be a lawyer's office. I don't know what the destiny God has for your life is, but I just want to plead and just ask you to stop making God the same level of the people who disappointed you, and dare to believe that he is bigger and greater than what your mom did, than what your dad did, than what your ex-husband did. He has nothing to do with that. He's greater than that. And if you would trust his plan, he can do a better job with your life than you ever could.
Absolutely.
I have my own son. It's named after me, my namesake. He is so disturbed by people just putting expectations on him. And there was a lady in the church that just kept saying, oh, you're going to be the next pastor of this church. You're going to take over this church. And he was just so mad. And one day, he's my Simon Peter. He did draw the sword. And one day he said, he got so tired of it, finally, yes, I am going to take over this church, and I'm going to turn it into a bar. We laugh about it now, but it was part of that whole dynamic. Pastor, this is part of the mandate that God has helped you with, One Church LA, Potter's House. One Church LA has so many young people, so many people that actually have rejected the church. Yeah. What's the bell? What's the sound that's bringing them back?
Yeah, I think, we talked about authenticity. We're in an information age now where, you can't lie. You couldn't lie if you wanted to, because everything is just one click away. And I think that this generation, a lot of people think that millennials don't want God. They do want God, but they want a real God, a God that is tangible, a God that is connected to them, and a God that understands them. And so for me, I think it's just the realness. I'm honest, I'm open, and I believe in them. One of the things that I never do is I never talk down to my congregation. When I look at Jesus and how he relates to us and how he deals with us, he's never talking you down. He's always talking you up.
Wow.
I'm thinking about the woman caught in the act of adultery, and the Pharisees at the time, they were talking her down, and she's on the ground. They want to stone her, and Jesus is saying, "Go and sin no more." So he's always pointing upward, and I believe that I believe in young people. I look at my own life and I see where I've come from and what God can do in my life, and I speak that to them. I father them. I honor them. I don't say, because you're young. A lot of times, what I think God wants to do in these last days is, and it's according to Malachi 4, I really believe that he wants to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children and the hearts of the children to the father, where there is mutual respect.
Yeah.
The gray hairs respect the strong legs, of the youth, and the strong legs of the youth respect the wisdom of the old. And I believe that when there is honor that transcends age, when the old don't say, "Oh, you're just a millennial and you're selfish," because it's not true.
Right.
And the young don't say, "Oh, you're old and you're out of touch." But when we begin to honor each other and one another and begin to work together, I think we're going to see incredible things happen in the kingdom.
Yeah.
And we're seeing it in our church right now.
Touré, I want just briefly for you to give our audience a sense of the book that's been birthed out of you about wholeness.
Yeah.
Because I think you've hit on that a couple times. How vital is it that before people can step into their destiny, that they work on the inside? Absolutely.
Well, I think that who you truly are is always ahead of where you are. Paul said in Philippians 3, he said, I haven't attained. And he said this not when he was a novice. He said it after he was accomplished spiritually. But he says in Philippians 3, not as though I've already attained or am perfect, but this is the one thing I do. I forget those things that are behind, and I reach forward to those things that are ahead. Jesus talked about when you bear fruit, he prunes you so that you might bear forth more fruit. So who you are is always ahead of where you are, and you have to grow up into the person that God is making the promise to. Let me explain that.
Wow.
God gives you a word.
Yeah.
But the word is so far ahead of where you are. And this is why we get discouraged, because God will speak a promise to us, and it seems like it's taken forever. In fact, sometimes the promise is so big that it feels like the promise is for somebody else because it's so huge. Well, in a way, it is for somebody else, because as you grow in God and all these layers of brokenness and all these layers of pain and these layers of dysfunction, after those things fall off of you, sanctification might be a theological term for it. It's basically transformation. Paul said you're going to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. When these things happen, you are a different person.
Yeah.
And so the promise was made to this you, but it will be manifest in a future you who got healed, who got delivered, who got set free through simply walking with Jesus. And so the book Wholeness is about how your insides determine your outsides. You know, we spend, you know, the cosmetic, you know, industry, cosmetic surgery and the likes. It's a $16 billion industry. And so we're spending all this money dressing up the outside when the true power is what's on the inside of you. Greater is he who is in you than he who's in the world. And so in wholeness, I walk the readers through, you know, my own life. And some of the common things that our brokenness produces in our lives. And I'm all about getting healed because the fruit of our life oftentimes is the byproduct of what's going on inside. So it's about uncovering these hidden obstacles. They're in our blind spots. We don't know them. We're born with them. Words have been spoken. We carry these things. So wholeness helps you to identify and overcome these thieves that operate in the blind spots of our lives.
I really hope that people understand that when life happens to you, that we have a tendency to shrink and to shrink our dreams, to shrink the vision that we have to our life to something that meets the disappointment that we experience. Maybe you're a teen mom like I was, and you say, well, the good husbands are for the women who did things the right way, and the careers are for the people who did college a certain way, when in reality, the only thing that's keeping you from God's best for your life is the idea that you can't possess it. I want you to break out of your comfort zone and to not settle for safe. Don't believe in the fear and the insecurities that exist within your own mind. We rebuke that right now in the name of Jesus, and we decree and declare liberty over your life, over your family, not just for you, but for generations to come. Who's going to teach your children how to live outside of the box? Who's going to teach your children how to walk on water? You've got to do that thing. Your mom's life is depending on it. Your father's life is depending on it. But more importantly, this world needs to see the power of what Jesus can do when we surrender our lives to him fully. So I am hoping that you will no longer settle for safe, for the safe zone that fear and insecurities create, but instead choose to be unstoppable with our Jesus.
I feel that just as Officer Brown was kneeling at your basically potential deathbed in the streets of Watts after a gang drive-by shooting, somebody right now just needs to be told, hang in there, bro. It's not over. And I have no doubt in my mind, Sarah, that women are watching today that just feel like that they have already boxed out their destiny and they're just going through the motions. And that this is not an accident. And there they are. And I know there's millions watching, but really the one person that's watching right now that's hanging on, I want you to speak into them, both of you, because this will be the night for them that they will decide not to live safe. This will be the night that they say, my purpose is awakened. This will be the night where they say, wholeness begins now. Let's help them.
Well, I believe that the gospel of Jesus Christ is about restoration. The whole story is about restoration and redemption. The Bible says in Joel, God says that I will restore the years that the locusts have eaten. And so I believe that when you look at our lives, and I believe that we're here, it's certainly not about us, but I do believe that God has made us a sign to you of the power and the reality of his restoration and restoration and resurrection. Truth be told, I made up a word, as Pastor Phil said, but this is a moment of restoration for you. And I believe that in this season, you know, I was preaching this year that this was the year of alignment. Where God was going to make all things work together for good and bring you into a time of restoration, which is going to bring acceleration. As you become aligned, it's going to bring acceleration and profound restoration to your life. We're living it. It's coming. It's yours. I'm telling you.
Sarah, just speak that prayer.
God, We thank you for the divine appointment that has taken place tonight. That you knew exactly who would be watching, you knew exactly who would be in the audience, but more importantly, you knew when we were crying, when my husband was shot and when I was pregnant at 13, you knew that this moment would eventually lead millions of people to you. So God, we honor your presence in this moment, and we ask that you would begin to touch people all over the world right now, that people who are feeling alone, people who are struggling with depression will begin to feel the love of our Father wrapping over them right now in the name of Jesus, that hope would be restored, that faith would be restored, that love is coming back into their hearts, not just love for this world, oh God, but love for you, the kind of love that cannot be taken away. God, we rebuke depression, we rebuke suicidal thoughts, we decree and declare that that is over right now in the name of Jesus, that they are new beings in you, and we are thanking you in advance for what's taking place in their hearts.